The prairie blood gold beneath the dying sun, a thin wind dragging grit across the open plain like whispered regret. He moved like a man half dead already, body broken, breath ragged, dragging one leg through dirt that remembered wars long buried. His thigh throbbed, a pulse of fire beneath torn deerskin, blood soaking into the fringe. Each step was a negotiation with pain, each breath a question he no longer had answers for. He was not old, but the years sat heavy on him. Too much seen, too much taken. His eyes, dark like river ice, watched the horizon for signs, smoke, motion, mercy. None came. By the time he reached the cottonwood near the canyon's edge, his strength had run dry. He collapsed, not in surrender but necessity. The earth was dry and cracked beneath him. Overhead, crows cut circles in the dusk, sharp cries echoing like judgment. He listened for hoofbeats, for dogs, for the sound of vengeance, but the world offered only wind and silence. He'd escaped, but only just. A bullet in the thigh, a bounty on his head, and a brother's name buried deep in the dust behind him. He hadn't looked back. Couldn't. His eyes drifted closed. Dreams crept in like smoke, fire in the tall grass, the sound of children screaming, a face he hadn't seen in 10 years twisted in betrayal. He dreamed of a river running red and the sound of drums. He dreamed of his mother's voice speaking Lakota, calling him something he no longer believed he was. When he woke, it was dark, the kind of dark that presses against your chest. Stars sharp above, cold and silent. But what stirred him wasn't the cold or the pain. It was her. She didn't speak. Not at first. Just stood there, framed in moonlight, holding a lantern low so the flame didn't catch the wind. She wore black, layers of it, stitched like mourning, practical as armor. Her rifle was strapped across her back, worn wood and iron that looked older than she did. He reached for the knife at his belt, but she moved faster, stepping close and kicking it from his reach. Still, she said nothing. Then she knelt, her hands, calloused and sure, pressed against the wound. He winced, tried to push her away, but her glare stopped him cold. There was no softness in her face, only resolve and something deeper, something like grief wearing a mask. She cleaned the wound with water that smelled of juniper and metal, wrapped it in linen that had once been part of a dress. She tied it off tight, cutting off the flow of blood and the edge of pain. Only when it was done did she speak. "Can you walk?" Her voice was low, rough-edged. No accent he could place, just weariness layered thick. He nodded, though he wasn't sure. She turned without waiting and began walking toward a narrow canyon mouth, the lantern bobbing with each step. He had little choice but to follow. Her home was half built into the rock, a cabin shaped by fire and stubbornness. One wall of stone, the other's timber worn gray by wind. A chimney smoked gently, the scent of sage and meat drifting into the night. Inside, it was warm, sparse but lived in. A single cot, a table with a cracked oil lamp, and tools arranged with a soldier's precision. A tin cup of water waited by the fire. She gestured for him to sit, and he obeyed. She returned with a bowl of stew and set it down in front of him. "I don't have enough food to waste," she said. "So finish it." He did, slowly, watching her the whole time. There was something in the way she moved, measured, efficient, like someone who'd spent too long around danger to ever truly relax. Her hands never strayed far from her rifle. "You live alone?" he asked. She looked at him, not at his face, but into him, as if measuring the weight of his words. "Yes." He didn't ask more. He knew that tone. It was the sound of a door closed and locked. Later, as he sat near the fire, legs stretched out and throbbing, he saw the object hanging above the hearth. A child's dress. Torn. Stained. Dried blood at the hem. She caught his gaze. "Don't ask," she said. He didn't. Outside, the wind picked up, moaning through the canyon like a ghost too tired to scream. She added wood to the fire and poured herself a measure of whiskey, sitting across from him. For a long time they said nothing. Then she broke the silence. "You're hunted." "Yes." "Why?" He looked into the flames. Because I did something right. She didn't flinch. Or something wrong that felt right at the time. He met her eyes. For a moment, something passed between them. Not trust, not yet. But understanding. The kind that only grows in people who've lost too much. I don't care what you did, she said. But they'll come looking. I know. I won't die for you. I wouldn't ask you to. But the lie hung between them. They both knew sometimes you don't get to choose what you'll die for. The night deepened. Coyotes cried in the distance. The fire settled into coals. She stood and walked to the window, looking out into the dark. He watched the way her shoulders tensed, like she could feel something coming long before it arrived. You should sleep, she said. You first. She turned back toward him. For a moment, the firelight caught her face, and he saw what she didn't say. The cracks beneath the calm, the storm beneath the steel. Tomorrow changes everything, she murmured. Then she vanished into the dark of the far room. He lay back against the wooden frame, eyes wide open. Sleep would not come easy, but he was alive. For now. And somewhere out there, death rode with a badge and a list. His name was on it, but so was hers. The next day would burn. The floor creaked under her boots as she moved through the early dark, a bucket in one hand, a rifle slung across her back. Morning hadn't broken yet, but the stars were fading, and the chill in the canyon air had teeth. She kept her eyes on the horizon, where the land rose up like a wave ready to crash. Inside, he stirred. The wound still burned, but less than before. The bandage had held. He listened to her movements, the steady rhythm of someone who'd lived too long in the company of threats. She didn't make noise unnecessarily. That was how he knew she was real. By the time she returned, the fire had been coaxed to life and the smell of coffee coiled into the air like a slow question. He sat with the blanket still draped over his shoulders, legs stiff and sore, but better. She set the bucket down with a soft thud and said nothing. He watched her kneel, strike a match and light the lamp. Her face, half-lit, looked carved from the same stone that walled the canyon. You said they'll come, she said. He nodded. They don't let things go. You run with anyone? No. Not for years. Her eyes flicked to his wound. That says otherwise. I was alone when it happened. She let the lie hang in the room. Not because she believed it, but because she'd heard worse. She moved to the window, pushed aside the heavy curtain, and stared out. Her fingers tapped the sill once, twice. He noticed they were stained, gun oil, ash, something darker beneath. He took a careful breath. What's this place to you? She didn't turn. Graveyard. Refuge. Depends on the day. He waited. Sometimes silence was all people had left. She broke it with a scrape of a chair, pulling it toward the fire and sitting across from him. Her gaze didn't waver. You said something right got you hunted. I helped someone who should have been dead. Law don't like that. Not when the man I helped shot a railroad baron's son in front of 6 witnesses. She didn't blink. I stopped them from finishing him off. Thought it was mercy. Turned out it was a bounty. You still think it was right? I think it was what I could live with. That earned a nod. Not approval. Recognition. She leaned back. I did things too. Once. He waited. She didn't elaborate. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the dry rasp of distant prairie. It moved through the cracks in the cabin walls, whispering through the boards like memory. He shifted, wincing. The child's dress above the hearth. Her face tightened. He didn't press. Some stories you only tell to ghosts. Instead, he said, you saved me. You could have left me to rot. I didn't do it for you. Why then? She hesitated. Because the world took everything I loved, and I don't think it deserves to take one more. He nodded. A long silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It felt like the hush before thunder. The day stretched out slow. She worked outside, skin wrapped in black, moving like shadow against the pale canyon rock. He watched from the door, unable to do more than sit and think. By afternoon, he managed to limp to the edge of the clearing. There he found her firing at rusted tin nailed to a tree trunk. Each shot split the silence with purpose. Her rifle was long, the stock polished by years of use. She reloaded faster than most men could speak. He leaned against the post, arms crossed. You were trained. I trained myself. Why? Because I learned no one was coming to save me. She lowered the rifle, letting it hang at her side. And you? You know how to shoot. Well enough to make enemies. She cracked the faintest smile, more grim than amused. Then tomorrow, we wait for them. He looked up toward the ridge. You think they'll find me? They're not looking for you anymore. Not exactly. He turned. What do you mean? She walked past him, into the cabin, voice trailing like smoke. You led them here. They'll want to know why you're still breathing. That night, she cooked rabbit over the fire. They shared the silence like a meal, letting it speak where words failed. He asked finally, what would you do if they came tonight? She stared at the flames. Kill the first. Scare the second. Let the third crawl back and spread the story. Which story? That death waits here. The fire cracked. He leaned forward. And if you die? She didn't look away. Then I'll do it loud. He believed her. Later, as they settled in, the air grew heavy. The moon rose high, pale and hard. He couldn't sleep, and neither could she. He saw her move to the corner of the cabin, pull out a battered tin box, and open it with shaking hands. Inside, letters. Torn photos. A revolver, still loaded. She didn't know he was watching. She took out a small pair of moccasins and held them in her lap like they were something sacred. Her face didn't change, but her body folded in, just slightly. Then she returned the box to its hiding place. He said nothing. Sleep finally came to both, but fitful, like wolves circling a fire. When the morning light crept over the canyon rim, the first thing he noticed was the birds. Silent. He reached for his rifle before he could think. She was already standing by the window, face still, jaw clenched. He followed her gaze. 3 horses on the ridge. Watching. Waiting. The next day had arrived. They didn't move. The 3 riders on the ridge sat still as stone, horses framed against the pale morning sky like vultures perched on judgment. Their silhouettes didn't waver. They weren't scouts. Scouts look for weakness. These men were watchers. Waiting. Measuring. She stepped away from the window slowly, no panic in her limbs, only a rigid calculation. They're not coming down, he said. Not yet, she replied. They're deciding if it's worth the blood. He nodded, jaw tight. His legs still ached, but the fever had broken. Pain was useful now. It kept his focus sharp. They want me, he said, but they'll take anything that gets in the way. She didn't answer, just picked up the long rifle from the wall, checked the chamber, then moved to the front door. Her movements were precise, like someone winding a clock before a storm. Outside, the wind was low and steady, but it carried tension like scent on a hound. Dust curled at the edge of the canyon. He limped to the table and opened the drawer. Inside were cartridges, a folding knife, a flint. No revolver. I only have 1 gun, she said without turning. I don't need yours, he replied, pulling his own from beneath his bedroll. It was heavy, black with wear. The cylinder clicked as he turned it, checking each round like a prayer. I buried 6 with this, he said. But they all bled different. She looked over. Then bleed a 7th. If it comes to that. The 3 riders vanished from the ridge by mid-morning, gone with the sun at their backs. Neither of them spoke as they disappeared, only stared until the last shadow slid behind the rocks. He exhaled slow. They'll flank wide, she said. Circle through the dry basin, come up behind us after nightfall. How do you know? Because that's what I'd do. They fortified the cabin in silence. She handed him hammer and nails. He boarded the lower windows with the steadiness of someone who had nailed shut more than coffins. She checked her traps, then laid trip lines with bells carved from old brass, a whisper of sound enough to split sleep. As dusk crawled in, they lit no lamps. The cabin held its breath. Over stew and bitter coffee, she spoke. The man you saved, was he worth it? He stirred the stew, eyes low. He was a child once. They all were. That's not an answer. I don't have one that fits in a sentence. The fire crackled dry and sharp. She said, "They killed my daughter." He looked up. Her voice hadn't changed, but her hands had stilled. 3 years ago. Not in a fight. Not for vengeance. Just for noise. For fun.
He didn't speak.
I tracked them for 7 months, she said. Burned our camp in Kansas, hunted the last one through Wyoming. But there's no justice. Only arithmetic. You subtract one monster and another steps into the space. She lifted her cup.
Drank.
I came here because it's quiet, she finished.
He leaned back.
I won't bring noise to your quiet. She shook her head. You already have. The night deepened. Coyotes didn't sing. Even the insects held back. Near midnight, one of the bells chimed. She didn't freeze, just stood and moved to the wall, rifle in hand. He followed, crouching near the boarded window, peering through a crack. Nothing. Then movement. A figure shifted at the tree line. Another to the right, closer than it should have been. She raised her rifle. Wait, he said. Let them show themselves. She ignored him. The first shot split the night. Her rifle kicked once, sending a man tumbling backward with a strangled cry. Another ran forward, yelling something unintelligible. Gunfire sparked at the edge of the field, quick, desperate. He returned fire, feeling the recoil in his bones. One shot missed, but the second caught a leg. The man dropped. Then silence. Smoke curled in the air, dry and acrid. She lowered her rifle. 2 down. How many more? Too many. They waited. 20 minutes passed. No more gunfire. No more movement. They're testing us, she whispered, trying to draw out fear. Then don't blink. They slept in shifts. She took the first, crouched by the window like a sentinel carved from ash. He lay on the floor, gun tucked beneath his arm, one eye always half open. When he woke, dawn had not yet touched the horizon. She sat with her back to the fire, hands wrapped around her knees. You ever think of leaving this place? He asked.
No.
I think of outlasting it. You could come north. The Black Hills. Still trees there. Still quiet. She turned slow. You think I want quiet? Quiet is what they gave me after the screams. He said nothing. Then a sound. Hoofs.
Fast.
They both stood, weapons in hand. A rider came into view. Young. Reckless. Charging without backup. Fool, she muttered. She took aim but didn't fire. He's bait. I'll take him. He stepped out, gun raised, and fired once. The horse screamed, stumbled. The rider fell and didn't rise. No other movement. Just stillness. She turned to him. They're not trying to win tonight. They're trying to keep us awake. Break us before the real fight. He wiped sweat from his brow. Then let them try. The sky was bleeding blue now. Another day had come. But it wasn't peace. They both knew. The worst would arrive with the sun. The sun rose slow and red, seeping across the canyon like a wound refusing to close. Heat followed, heavy and breathless, pressing into the dry earth and clinging to every surface. Flies buzzed where blood had soaked into the dirt from the night before, and the smell of gunpowder still hung like old smoke in the air. She stood outside the cabin, boots braced wide, eyes fixed on the trail. The quiet was different now, not the stillness of waiting, but the kind that comes before the killing starts. Her rifle rested easy against her shoulder, but her body hummed with tension. Behind her, he limped out onto the porch, revolver in hand, face drawn, skin pale beneath the morning light. They'll come full now, she said without turning. No more tricks. He nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Men like that don't forgive being wounded. Men like that don't deserve forgiveness. They both listened. Insects chirped again. A lizard darted across the path. The land pretended innocence. But the prairie wind carried something foul. Sweat, leather, horses moving where they shouldn't be. Then the dust came. 5 riders, maybe more, crested the ridge, sunlight catching the steel of their rifles and the brass of belt buckles.
They didn't stop to watch this time.
They descended like wolves, silent and deliberate. He checked his revolver. 6 shots. She crouched beside him. Make everyone matter. They didn't wait. The fight would not be won behind boarded windows. Together, they moved through the scrub, down into the dry wash behind the cabin. She pointed to a thicket of twisted oak and yucca, and they crouched low beneath its shadow. The first of the men arrived fast, sweeping past the front of the cabin with the precision of practiced hunters. 2 stayed mounted. 1 dismounted, moving cautiously toward the porch. He raised his pistol, waited, then breathed out and fired. The bullet punched through the man's chest, and he crumpled without a sound. Gunfire exploded in reply, splintering the doorframe, kicking up dirt where they'd stood minutes before. The cabin shuddered under the assault, boards cracking, glass shattering. She shifted, aimed from cover, and picked one rider from his horse with a clean shot to the shoulder. The man tumbled, screaming. That scream broke the silence, like thunder breaks dry sky. Then it became chaos. They moved together like animals cornered but unbroken, firing, retreating, circling wide. Blood soaked her sleeve from a graze to the arm, but she didn't flinch. He fell once, catching himself with a curse, but rose again before pain could claim him. They reached the back ridge as the sun hit its peak. From there, they could see the full scope, dust rising, corpses sprawled, and 2 of the riders retreating behind cover, waiting for advantage. "They'll come again," he said, breathing hard. "Last push." She nodded. "And we end it." He turned to her. "You could run." "I don't run," she said. "Not anymore." A beat passed. He looked to the tree line. "Then we draw them in." They moved again, back toward the ruins of the cabin, where the boards still smoldered and the porch was black with burn. He found the last of the cartridges in a broken drawer. She tore a strip of cloth from her shirt, wrapped it tight around her bleeding arm, and set her jaw. And then they waited. The final rider came alone. A tall figure with a coat like shadow and a rifle longer than his arm. His horse moved slow, deliberate, like it knew it was walking toward something final. He dismounted with ceremony, as if the whole canyon were watching. She recognized him. Her face didn't change, but her stance did. "You know him," he said quietly. She didn't answer. The man approached, gun held low but not idle. "I wondered if it was you," he called out, voice like rust on iron. "Always did vanish like smoke." She stepped forward. "You shouldn't have followed me." He smiled, teeth yellow.
Wasn't me who started this.
"You were just the echo." His eyes flicked to the man beside her. "You the stray she picked up? I'm the one who's going to bury you." The man's smile vanished. 3 breaths passed. Then 2 guns rose. The first shot came from her. The crack echoed up the canyon wall, sharp and clean. His rifle dropped. The second shot was his center mass, straight into the gunman's chest. The man staggered, coughed, tried to raise his weapon again. She stepped forward, placed the barrel of her rifle to his heart, and pulled the trigger. He collapsed like a tree, dust swallowing him. Then it was done. Silence came back slow. Birds returned. Wind whispered through the grass. The land exhaled. He dropped to one knee, finally letting the weight pull him down. She lowered her rifle and stared at the corpse like it was something she'd dreamt and finally woken from. "Was he the last?" he asked. "No such thing," she said. But her voice was softer now. He looked at her. "You could leave. Start new." She shook her head. "This land's got too many bones in it. I'm part of them now." "But you're not buried yet." She looked at the horizon, eyes unreadable. He stood, slow, pain still lacing his leg. "I'll head north. Black Hills, like I said." She didn't stop him. But as he turned to go, she said, "When the storms come, dig deep. They pass faster that way." He nodded. "And when the ghosts come?" She looked toward the cabin ruins. "Give them names. Then let them go." He walked until the canyon swallowed him. She stayed behind, rifle at her side, watching the land that had taken everything and still demanded more. But this time, it had not taken her. This time, she remained.